This geography video is going to help you revise all of your settlement topic for the thematic paper. Okay, so population is the study of people and settlement is going to be where those people live. A little bit of an overlap here with the population scheme of work. So urbanisation is when people move from the countryside to the city, so from a rural area to an urban area. Rapid urbanisation in LEDCs causes lots of problems because they're not able to keep up with the amount of people coming into the city. So we find that people start to live in marginal sites, like on the periphery or the edge of the city, and they live in steep hillsides which are prone to landslides. They take material that's available to them, like wood and corrugated iron, and they generally live in very cramped conditions that are prone to high crime rates, a lack of water, electricity and sewage. There's often a lot of rubbish left lying around as well. So you can see in the photograph we've got Sao Paulo, the nice big CBD, the city, and then we've got the favelas around the edge. That is because of the rapid urbanisation. Counter-urbanization is the complete opposite. It's when people move from the city to the rural area, so the urban to the countryside, and that is generally happening in MEDC countries, and people are doing that because they want peace and quiet, low crime rates, better schools and cheaper housing. The commuter range is going to be the distance that people travel from their homes to their place of work. And the negatives of counter-urbanisation are that the villages get really big, that they lose their community feel. The additional houses are built up on greenfield land, so there's less chance for people to have recreation like football pitches and space to walk the dog. House prices increase, which means the local people can't afford to buy them anymore. And because we're living in villages and working in the city centre, we're commuting in and out, which means we increase the amount of congestion on the road and the CO2 emissions from cars. That's going to contribute towards global warming. So the UK is suffering a housing crisis, and by 2016 the government wants to see 240,000 new homes built every year, and the biggest demand for these houses is in the southeast of England. That's because it's where London is, where the capital is. It's the biggest demand for jobs, and it's also when people migrate or immigrate into the UK, they generally go to London first. So a few key terms for you then. A zone is an area with mainly one type of land use. A conurbation is a large urban area where the cities and towns have got so big that they've all joined and formed together. Land use means the different ways that land is used, so there's four main types: residential, industry, transport and leisure. Industry refers to things like factories, and residential is an area with housing. A sink estate is a housing area with a poor reputation for its living conditions. So our urban land use model here then, you can see that in the centre of this model we've got the CBD, the Central Business District. That's where we find we've got the businesses and shops and offices. We've got a very busy area with lots of transport, and the land is very expensive, so people tend to build upwards instead of outwards. In the layer next to that, the blue layer, we've got the inner city. That's where we live in Brixton, is where the lower class housing is, and generally the old industry and factories. We've got smaller houses that are terraced, and they were built for the people who worked in the factories. And it's generally for people who can't afford to live further out of the city and to pay the commute to get into the city centre. The orange layer, the next one out, is the suburbs. That's where we've got our medium class housing and the semi-detached housing, which is two houses together. They tend to have nice gardens and garages. It's less crowded with less traffic and less pollution, so there's much more space for families. In the last area, this is the edge of the city, but when we meet the rural area, it's called the rural urban fringe. We find that we've got really large business parks out here and perhaps shopping centres, out of town shopping centres, and that's because the land is really cheap, so they're able to build very large plots which have space for car parks as well. The housing is generally very high quality and large. We have detached housing, and the land is a lot cheaper. And people who like the rural lifestyle might live here, so you've got easier access to go and play golf or to go horse riding. This is the Burgess model, which is very similar to the urban land use model. It basically shows the CBD in the centre, the factories and industry in the red zone, the green is the lower class housing, the purple is the middle class housing, and the yellow is the high class housing. So where would you find each of these land uses? Well, the golf course, you would find that in the rural urban fringe, along with the large detached house. The office block would be in the CBD, or the Central Business District. The semi-detached house is going to be in the suburbs, and the factory and terrace housing is going to be found in the inner city. Deprivation is a complex way of measuring poverty that uses a range of indicators. Okay, so in LEDCs there's a big poverty gap. We find that we've got the very rich CBD, and then we've got lots of informal settlements like shanty towns and favelas around the edge of the CBD. And that is so that they can easily get into the city to be able to find work. Self-help schemes are something that's been put in place, particularly in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro. Vicina is the largest favela there, and it's undergoing this self-help scheme where people are able to get money from the government in order to make their houses more concrete. So they are doing it in stages, and it involves the people in the community. So they're improving the infrastructure. For example, in this photo you can see that they are replacing the wooden buildings with brick. They've got water tanks to collect fresh water. The houses are being extended, so they're making use of all the extra space, and they are getting equipped with electricity mains and sewage systems so that people are able to have a better quality of life. Services then. Well, we know we find more services in urban areas than in the rural area, like villages and hamlets, and they're generally determined, that access is determined by wealth. So the wealthier you are, it is thought that the more services you will have access to. And so there's lots of different types of services. In these photographs you can see examples of a library, a school, a church, a hospital, and we've got shops and transport as well. A sphere of influence. So we're moving on to retail now. Sphere of influence is the average distance that people are willing to travel to use a service. So if we're going to buy a convenience or low order good like milk or bread, our sphere of influence is going to be very small because we're not going to travel very far to get it. If we're buying a comparison or high order good like a TV, an Xbox, PlayStation, sofa, we're going to be travelling much further to buy those goods, so our sphere of influence is going to be much larger. Catchment area is simply the area within which people travel to a service, and the threshold population is the amount of people who are needed for a service to work. So shopping patterns have changed quite a lot over recent years. We've got an increase in the amount of people shopping online, and we've got a lot of out-of-town shopping centres, and we've also got the use of supermarkets. So out-of-town shopping centres, we tend to use those more because we have more car ownership. That means that we need to be able to park, and in the CBD that can be very difficult. And the land is also much cheaper outside of the CBD, so it's easier to build the large shopping centres in the rural urban fringe. We also shop at supermarkets because we want to be able to buy cheaper products, and the supermarkets are able to buy in bulk, which means that they can offer deals like 2 for 1, whereas independent bakers and butchers and fishmongers are not able to provide that service. E-tailing is the term used for shopping online or shopping on the internet, and that has increased in recent times because we've got an increase of technology and it's more widely available. So there's been quite a few impacts of the changing shopping patterns. On the plus side, we're finding that we pay a lower price for our products as we're going to the supermarkets and getting 2 for 1 offers. Superstores like Tesco, they're running really nice large profits, and we're finding that more people are starting to be concerned about their health, so they're growing their own vegetables, so they know where the food has come from, and they can opt out of using pesticides on fruits and vegetables as well. Negatives, the corner shops and the post office are starting to close because they can't make a profit because people are not shopping there anymore, they're going to the supermarket. The farmers are forced to accept lower prices from the supermarkets for their goods because the supermarkets have a monopoly on who they can buy their fruit and veg from. And the CO2 emissions increase as more people are driving to out-of-town shopping centres. You can see in pictures A and B a difference in the shopping landscape. In the first picture we've got a department store called TJ Peckett, and in the picture B you can see that you've got Office, there's a Superdrug as well, and that is showing the difference between how the high street used to look and it looks now. So it used to have a lot of independent retailers, now we tend to find that we see the same retailers wherever we go. They're called clone towns, so we're finding that the larger chains are setting up in every area, so there's not as much variety of shops. So for example, if you go to Lewisham, you will find that there is an M&S, a TK Maxx, a Boots, a Superdrug. If you go to the main high street in Brixton, you'll also find that there's an M&S, a TK Maxx, a Boots and a Superdrug, so it's the same shops, which means that it's a clone town. Ethical shopping refers to buying fair trade products. That's where everyone gets paid a fair amount for the work that they've done. We're buying locally grown produce, which reduces the food mileage, and that's the distance the food has been transported before it's sold. So if we're reducing the food mileage, that means we're using less CO2 emissions in order to get the food to the shop. People are looking for the country of origin on the packaging, so if we're buying meat, it's better to buy British meat because the food miles will be much shorter. And we're going to small local shops and avoiding large chains so we don't put those small shops out of business. Bluewater is your case study for retail. The shopping centre was built on a brownfield site, and it used to be a chalk quarry between 1960 and 1980. Bluewater is an out-of-town shopping centre that's in Kent, and it serves the areas around Dartford and Gravesend. The shopping centre is not just a shopping centre, it also has leisure facilities like a gym, a car parking area and parkland. They have 25 million visitors every year, and it has a very large threshold population, so that means it needs a lot of people to come to it in order for it to survive. 11 million people also live within 1 hour, which means it has a very large catchment area. So Bluewater was built because we've got more car ownership, so there's less parking in the city centre, people needed somewhere to park to go shopping. It also means that people are able to travel further if they've got a car, so they're able to travel out of the city centre. There's lots and lots of shops under one roof, so there wasn't enough room in the city centre to put all of that together. And we've also got the introduction of motorways, which makes it easier for people to travel out of town rather than just staying within their city centre. This has had a few negative impacts on the CBD, and it's meant that in towns like Dartford and Gravesend, we're seeing that less people are shopping there when they're going to Bluewater. That means that over time the town will become derelict and the shops will have to close down. It also causes a lot of light and noise pollution for the local residents, and a lot of congestion on the motorways with people travelling there and commuting, because lots of people will work in the shops there as well. On the plus side, they have improved the local transport network. There's lots of shops under one roof for everybody, and it has increased the amount of new businesses coming into the area as well to provide extra services. So for example, in this image here you can see the Holiday Inn Express has set up a hotel there, and that's for the people who want to come and shop and stay over. So it's creating more business in the area, which will improve the local economy. NIMBY simply refers to not in my backyard, and it means that you want a service to be there, but you don't want it to be right on your doorstep because you don't want to suffer from the light, noise and air pollution. So MEDC urban areas can improve by gentrification, which is a process where a rundown neighbourhood is improved and becomes more desirable. Reurbanization is a recent trend of people moving back into the centre of urban areas. And regeneration, that is when we improve an area by investing in its environment. Greenwich Millennium Village is one of our case studies for settlement, and that is the case study where we're looking at changes in urban land use. Okay, so the Greenwich Millennium Village used to be gasworks as part of the London Docklands, and it's situated just on the River Thames, and the O2 Arena is nearby. It's thought that to be a sustainable development because the houses have been built so that they use 80% less energy and 30% less water than other houses built in the same area. And the materials used to build the houses were cedar wood from sustainable forests. The sustainable forest simply means that they replant the trees when they cut them down, and they've used aluminium on the houses as well, which can be recycled. The houses are built on an old site which has been cleared of pollution, so that's better for the local environment as well. And we've got mixed land use. Mixed land use means that we've got shops, offices, residential, parkland, community centre and a school all in one small area, which reduces the need of people to travel. We've also got public transport, cycling and paths for walking, so to encourage people to use public transport and to cycle rather than using their private car. In addition, the local Sainsbury's uses 50% less energy than other supermarkets. The benefits of Greenwich Millennium Village is that it makes people think sustainably about what we can do to reduce CO2. There is an eco-friendly supermarket, there's an underground system nearby and lots of public transport which reduces CO2 emissions from cars. However, on the other hand, it's very expensive to live there. The flats and houses cost about $750,000. It's an old industrial site which may have toxic waste, has views of the old gasworks and the Blackwall Tunnel, and it will take a long time to get there. and when they do, the buses take a long time to get there, and when they do, they are often full. Brownfield sites are sites that have been built on before. Greenfield sites are sites which have not been built on before, and green belt land is land which is protected and we are not allowed to build on.